The room was quiet in a way I had never noticed before. Not peaceful, not comforting, just heavy. The kind of silence that makes you aware of every small movement your body makes. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, trying not to move my hands too much, but they kept moving anyway. My fingers rubbed together nervously, over and over, like my body already sensed something my mind hadn't fully understood yet. The lamp beside the bed gave off a soft yellow light. It made the room feel smaller somehow. Smaller, warmer, harder to breathe inside. I kept staring at the floorboards because they felt easier to understand than the moment I was sitting in. I tried focusing on my breathing. Slow breaths, quiet breaths. If I stayed calm enough, maybe the uncomfortable feeling inside me would disappear. But it didn't. It stayed there. That quiet feeling that something wasn't right, even though everything around me looked completely normal.
I didn't understand it then, but that was the first moment I realized something can look normal on the outside while feeling completely different inside. That realization frightened me, not because something dramatic happened, because nothing dramatic happened. That was the confusing part. The room looked ordinary. The walls were familiar. The blankets smelled clean. Everything appeared exactly how it was supposed to appear. And still, something inside me felt unsettled. That's when something started to feel off. Not loudly, quietly, like a thought slowly forming somewhere deep inside me. He sat beside me carefully, slowly, not fully confident either. That surprised me. I think part of me believed marriage magically made people emotionally prepared, like age alone somehow creates understanding. But sitting there beside him, I realized neither of us fully understood this moment emotionally. We were both pretending silence meant confidence, pretending uncertainty was normal, pretending confusion wasn't sitting heavily between us. At the time, I told myself this was normal, that everyone probably feels strange at first, that maybe this discomfort eventually disappears. But deep inside, something resisted that explanation. Because confusion is temporary, this felt deeper than confusion. This felt like emotional isolation, and nobody had prepared me for that part. Nobody explained how lonely it can feel when people expect you to understand something emotionally, before you actually do. That realization stayed quietly inside me all night. Heavy, persistent, and the silence inside the room only made it stronger. We barely spoke. Just small words, simple things. The kind of conversation people use when they're trying to avoid what they're actually feeling. But every time the talking stopped, the silence returned immediately. Stronger than before. I became aware of every tiny sound. The shifting of blankets, the soft movement of the bed, the wind touching the curtains. Even my own breathing sounded too loud. That's when I realized something important. I was trying to disappear emotionally inside the room, trying not to take up space, trying not to say the wrong thing, trying not to reveal how confused I really felt. Because once you believe everyone else understands something except you stop trusting your own feelings. You become quieter, smaller, careful. That's exactly what happened to me. Looking back now, I think that was the first night I understood how silence teaches people to hide confusion. Especially young people, especially women raised to avoid difficult questions. Because silence doesn't remove uncertainty, it hides it, and hidden uncertainty slowly turns into shame. I didn't understand it then, but I had already started blaming myself for not understanding something nobody clearly explained emotionally. That's what stayed with me longest, not the night itself, the feeling that I was somehow failing at being normal. The next morning confused me even more. Everything looked ordinary again. Breakfast was prepared. People smiled. Conversation sounded calm and familiar. Nobody acted like anything important had happened. And meanwhile, inside me, something still felt unsettled. That was the beginning of something bigger. The split between appearance and reality. Between what people show publicly and what they quietly carry inside themselves. Days passed, then weeks, but the feeling stayed. Quiet, persistent. Like a question waiting somewhere in the background of every thought. And once a question stays long enough, it slowly changes the way you see everything around you. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way older women avoided direct conversations. The way uncomfortable topics disappeared quickly. The way silence filled spaces where honesty should have existed. That's when something started to feel off again. Not just about marriage, about the entire culture surrounding it. Because I slowly realized something painful. People weren't quiet because they fully understood. They were quiet because they learned not to ask difficult questions. That realization changed everything for me. One afternoon, I was helping another young woman hang laundry outside. Her name was Lydia. We weren't discussing anything serious, just daily life, work, weather, simple things. And then suddenly, without even looking at me, she said quietly, "I thought something was wrong with me too." That sentence stayed with me for years, because in that moment, I realized I wasn't alone. And strangely, that realization didn't comfort me immediately. It made everything heavier. Because now it wasn't just confusion anymore. It was pattern. Something shared, something repeated, something quietly carried by many women. We didn't continue the conversation after that. We didn't need to, because we both understood exactly what the other meant. That realization followed me home that evening. I remember laying awake, staring into the darkness, thinking about how many people probably carried the same confusion silently, how many convinced themselves discomfort was normal, how many accepted emotional uncertainty because nobody around them spoke honestly about it. Night after night, those thoughts stayed with me, and every morning, everything continued normally again. That was the hardest part, the normalness of it all. Because when emotional discomfort becomes ordinary, people stop questioning it. At the time, I told myself this was normal, but slowly, I stopped believing that. Because healthy things usually become clearer over time. This never fully did, and that realization frightened me, not because I suddenly understood everything, but because I realized how emotionally unprepared we really were. Not weak, not broken, simply expected to understand experiences nobody explained honestly. That difference matters deeply. I didn't understand it then. But silence shapes people emotionally long before they realize it's happening. It teaches you which feelings should stay hidden, which questions feel dangerous, which discomforts you're expected to carry quietly. And once you grow up inside that silence, you stop recognizing confusion as something deserving answers. You start treating it like personal failure instead. That understanding took years. Years of slowly learning words I didn't have when I was younger. Pressure, expectation, emotional suppression, isolation, things I had experienced deeply, without knowing how to describe them. And once you finally have words for something, you begin seeing your past differently. Looking back now, I don't think the hardest part was the night itself. I think the hardest part was believing my confusion meant something was wrong with me, when really, I had simply never been emotionally prepared, honestly. There's a huge difference between those things, and nobody explained that difference. I still think about that night sometimes, not because of what happened, but because of how alone I felt while pretending everything was fine, because of how badly I wanted someone to simply speak honestly. Some things stay with you, not as sharp memories, but as feelings your body remembers long before your mind fully understands them. And maybe that's the part nobody talks about. Not the event itself, but the silence surrounding it. The expectation that young people should understand emotional experiences, without emotional guidance. If you grew up in a place where silence was treated like maturity, where difficult questions felt dangerous, where confusion had to stay hidden, I understand you, because I know what it feels like to slowly realize something isn't healthy, while everyone around you keeps calling it normal. And maybe, speaking honestly about it now, is the first real understanding I was ever given.